Hi, Crystal. Thank you so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a fourth year graduate student, hopefully finishing up soon. I am at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I do education research in biology, and yeah. I had a short time teaching high school. I did some work as assessment developer, and yeah, planning on continuing on in academia doing education research.
What got you into science?
I would say my dad. I'm sorry, my cat is a little a little feisty this morning. But my dad is a geologist, like hence the name Crystal, and he always had a really good way of talking about science with us. Like he would take us to the river, he would take us to these geologics, like outcrops and these different sites and like swamps and all these natural parks. And he had a really nice way of talking about science in ways that were really understandable to like a young kid. And that was something I always really admired about him, and I want to emulate. And I think really was something that drove me into science education.
That's really a wonderful story. Um, I mean, do you have like an example? I know it's kind of maybe putting you on the spot
Uh-huh.
of how he might explain something that would connect versus maybe how you see it being done today in science.
Sure. My dad was always really big on hands-on stuff. So there was this riverbed that he would take us to where they had all these fossilized shark teeth. And then we'd go down and he'd bring these little sifters and he would say like these teeth have been here for so long. And even though we are on land right now, like there used to be an ocean here, and that's why there's shark teeth in the middle of this this waterway because millions of years ago it was underwater. And there was something about like being there and touching these fossils and just like that immersive real life experience that I think is really difficult to replicate in a lot of the ways that we do and talk about science right now. But yeah, I think going to places and actually seeing things is really an important part of what science is.
Well, talking about going places and seeing things,
Yeah.
uh, did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
I did hear about it. I heard about it in the news a few weeks ago. They were talking about how it's been 50 years since the last time people were up there.
What do you think about it?
I think it's great. I think having real people doing science and having that as an example is really hard to replicate in terms of like public awareness of science. Like the first moon landing, I think was so important. Like in terms of people who were not even scientists knew the names. They knew Lance Armstrong. They knew um, Buzz Aldrin, and so much so, like I had a friend in college whose brother was named Aldrin. Like his parents weren't scientists, but like that was a name that resonated with them as somebody that they could look up to. And um, I guess if we have people going up there again, we can look up to them both like metaphorically and literally.
Um, Not to put it on the spot, but do you know how many geologists have actually stepped foot on the moon?
I don't.
Would you believe only one?
I would be surprised if there was more than that. Geology feels like it's a pretty limited field in the first place.
Well, I mean, if you're going to a big rocky body, it seems like it seems like a geologist might have the best skills, I guess.
Yeah. I guess you have to have the geology skills and then all the additional astronaut training. There's many levels of, I guess, education experience that would get you to a place like the moon.
Um, as a biologist yourself,
Mhm.
and as this daughter of a geologist, How important is it for like the principal investigator to actually be there in the environment versus directing other people? Does it really make a difference?
Oh, good question. I think in order to really manage a project and to be someone like a PI, I think there is a level of understanding that you only get by being in a certain place. Like I can't imagine doing field work in ecology if you've never actually been to the field site. Like even the data that you get, you could have a great collection of data that somebody got for you, but unless you have the context of where the data was coming from and like the exact places and the characteristics and the kind of more qualitative aspect of that, getting to be the immersive again in the field type of experience. Like I can't imagine it's as meaningful of a project if you don't have that place-based experience to really conform your judgments. So I think having that I think place is important.
Um, and I want to ask one more question about your career. So how come you didn't go to into geology? Where did you make that like kind of detour towards biology? Like,
Sure. So I started out, I actually went to college for environmental science and I was tutoring students and I realized that I think I like the education side more than the field work part of it. To me, I felt my skill set was maybe a little bit better at the education, like communicating ideas and coming up with new ways to do that rather than maybe the technical like groundwater collection and the identifying samples. So I switched from environmental science into education, but I really did admire the work that my dad does, and I had wanted, I had intentions of doing that, but I switched gears a little bit into something I think is maybe a little bit of a better fit for me.
um, now you were talking about changes over the course of millions of years, which is really fascinating to think about, from a geology standpoint and culture and human and life and all that. But a little bit hard for me to fathom. Uh, where do you see humanity maybe over a shorter period of time, let's say 200 years, like out in the future?
Oh, 200 years. Um, I'm hoping we 200 years out have figured out ways to shift away from carbon-based energy. And I'm hoping by then maybe we can figure out ways to do more carbon capture or ways to sequester and kind of tamp down some of the climate change effects that we're grappling with at the moment. But yeah, it's hard to even think about how quickly things have progressed. Like I look at what we've done even just in the past few years in terms of technology during COVID and what we've accomplished and how much we've been able to just progress technology wise. Like I can't imagine doing the things that like holding conferences over Zoom. I can't imagine like that happening even 5 years ago. But now, I don't know, 200 years. That's a good question. I would probably say humanity is maybe moving more towards city-based, like localizing a lot of people into smaller areas. Um, and I'm assuming there's probably big changes in technology in ways that I can't even imagine.
It's yeah, it's difficult. I mean, like I imagine like people in 1820s had no idea that in 1903 we would have the Wright brothers like actually fly an airplane, or 1969 we'd be putting boot prints on the moon. It's like kind of
Yeah,
amazing.
it's wild to think about, and the challenges that we have today. I don't think, like I don't know, people in Mesopotamia would have even imagined. Like I don't think that's something that they would even understand the kind of challenges that we are thinking about at the moment in ways that we probably wouldn't understand the challenges that they were thinking about. But yeah, it's things move pretty fast.
Um, well, I just to take a kind of more focused approach to the 200-year question, do you think we'll all still be living on the Earth, or do you think some of us would have, like humanity would have expanded to actually encompass more places than just the Earth, and we have people living like on the moon, Mars, space stations, other places, any place you could imagine?
Yeah, yeah. I maybe I'm a little bit pessimistic about it, but I am thinking of in terms of like a closed system. Like if we're going to a place like Mars where there's not really a sustainable atmosphere, we would have to come up with the way to manage oxygen levels and everything that we would bring to Mars would have to be super efficiently processed. Like right now, we have a lot of waste in how we operate as people, in terms of like plastics and trash and whatnot. And I don't know if there's an easy way to change that in at least the way I think about how people act and behave. And um, so I feel like it's the if we would go to a place like Mars, the level of consumption and the level of like comfort and expectations for what are needed to survive would have to really drastically change. Like I can't imagine living an American lifestyle up on Mars, if that makes sense. So maybe I'm a little bit
Completely.
a little bit pessimistic about it, in terms of like comfort level of living up there. So I don't know if a lot of people would opt for it. Um, but I'm also living in a very comfortable household with cats, and I've got more resources than I probably should be consuming all the time. But so maybe in my perspective, I have a hard time thinking about living in a place where there are so few resources, and the ones that we would ship up there have to be so valuable. And um, yeah, that's the way I'm thinking about it.
Like high-tech poverty, I guess.
Yes, yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Um, so I know we're just a few years into this decade, but uh, do you have any expectations for any significant changes like this decade? I mean, like in the 1900s, we had like the invention of, um, you know, um, heavier than air flight, and I forget when the light bulb was invented, but not too far from around then. And then you had like in the 19, I guess, 50s, the first time we actually put um, a non-natural satellite in orbit around the Earth.
Mhm.
And then like the 1990s, the internet really became popular, even though I guess it was really invented maybe a decade or so before then. Um, do you have any expectations for this decade?
I I'm hoping that we move towards efficiency in a lot of the ways that we are both like using technology. So like there's like LED lights are such a big thing, and I'm hoping that there's like an equivalent kind of shift in technology for other appliances and in other ways that we use a lot of the energy within our own household. Um, like there's got to be a way to make drying clothes more efficient, other than like I hang dry a lot of my stuff, but like in terms of appliances, I feel like refrigerators, the washers, dryers, the things that use up a lot of energy within our houses, I'm hoping there's a way to make those more efficient by the time the decade's over. But I don't know enough of the current technology landscape to understand and to grasp and to even like imagine what other people are thinking about in terms of big inventions. Maybe I'm thinking a little small here.
And no worries, but talking about, I guess, improvement in energy management, it still amazes me how much human energy is required to like wash clothes. Like, I mean, I've never, I mean, you're like, um, I guess sun drying the clothes out of the washing machine, but I have a dryer next to my washing machine. I've never taken the clothes out of the washer and say, I wonder where I should put the clothes. It's always been in the dryer. I'm
Uh-huh.
wondering why I'm still doing that decade after decade. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely something I think about a lot. I try to reserve my dryer just for sheets, and then everything else I have like indoor lines for the winter. But yeah, because I know how much energy it takes just to dry some clothes. And like it to me, I'm like, oh, what a horrible way to spend some carbon. Just making sure my clothes are dry.
especially whenever you're wasting so much as, or not utilizing so much of the sun's energy.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, so in 200 years, people looking back to this time period, this decade, well, what do you think they are likely to remember?
Um, I'm hoping that we're remembered for good things rather than bad things. And for me, it can be easy to dwell on the negatives, but I'm hoping that they look at us and think, wow, these people were really, really good at like seeing global connections and being able to draw from these different areas and like build these international networks. We have things that are made in China that get shipped to the US and they do it so fast. And like our fruits travel from South America to like we just have this such a vast network of interconnected markets that to me is really, really impressive. Um, and again ways that I don't always understand all the different things. We saw like the shipping canal incident and like things kind of collapsed for a bit. And just how that one moment really illustrated how much we rely on those networks of kind of goods transport. But I think another thing that I hope we get remembered for is like the vaccine rollout. I like in terms of how fast it went out, I think that's very, very impressive. Like that turnaround between when we knew COVID was a thing and when we got vaccines first issued was very, very fast in terms of like scientific pipeline. Um, maybe we will also be remembered for how the vaccine rollout was also maybe not well adopted between a lot of people. But the actual scientific merit and the development of it was really fast, and I think is something that we should be proud of and hopefully are remembered for.
I hope so. Yeah, it'd be amazing. In my mind, the whole COVID situation's already like really faded in the background. I almost like purposely don't think about that. But maybe after a few years or decades, to have a better perspective. Um, would you take a trip to space if you could?
Oh, I am a very nervous traveler. I don't even like traveling in general. I do it if I have to. I most of my travels just when I have to go to conferences, and then I will make the best of those experiences. But I don't usually like to travel, so I probably would be a nervous wreck if I had to leave the planet. Um, yeah, I know myself well enough to say I probably would not do it, but not because I don't think space is cool, but because I am just so nervous to travel places. So yeah, I think getting in an airplane is sometimes a little lot for me. So getting into a spaceship, oof, don't think I could do it.
That's interesting. And is it just air travel that makes you nervous, or travel in general?
Travel in general, I think I am very happy in my comfort zone, and when I start pushing that and going to new places, it's fun to learn things in new places. But I'm also like, there's all these different things that I don't know, and some of those unknowns can be maybe a little much. So, I like to be prepared. I like to have like something in case of emergencies, and sometimes those emergencies you don't know what the emergency is going to be when you're 1,000 miles away from home or further. So just a little nervous traveler a bit.
But that makes you prepared. So there's like a strength to everything.
Yes, yeah, real big on the itineraries, doing the Google Maps, making sure I know where everything is when I'm going new places, and um, very prepared in ways that make me a terrible person to travel with, because everybody's like, all right, enough. Like we just kind of like find a place for dinner. I'm like, oh, this place had like, don't go here. People said that one's bad. So maybe I take it a little to the extreme.
That's wonderful. Um, well, those were pretty much the questions I had. I know we covered a lot of topics, but is there anything that you wanted to talk about, or did you have any questions?
I'm curious what you're going to do with this. Is this going to be a book, a publication? I I know you've been doing this project for a while. I kind of scoped out your bio before chatting, but do you have long-term goals for where this work is going to go?
No, I don't. 3 years ago, almost to the day, I think yesterday was the anniversary, or the day before yesterday. And I started this project sort of on a whim, and after so many interviews, I'm kind of committed to completing
Mhm.
an interview a day to the end of 2024. And then, other than keeping with that commitment, I really haven't thought much about it. I think my plans are probably just to let it sit for maybe half a decade or a decade and come back and look at it. And maybe I'll have some ideas at that point. But um, kind of my plans right now are just to uh, have these recorded interviews. And I keep thinking that my real target audience hasn't been born yet, because
Mhm.
I think this is going to be a transformational decade when it comes to space. It's going to be like the 1990s were to the internet. Um, and I think right now it's largely below the public consciousness,
Mhm.
and there's some people that kind of believe it might happen, but there's a lot of people that are like, I'm not so sure, it hasn't happened yet. And so I think this is kind of like an interesting time. It's sort of like um, 1902, 1903 was a good time to ask people about air travel and what they thought,
Mhm.
because you could have like an interesting conversation. You see like little glimpses of the possibility, but the realities of, airports and a billion passengers a year, you know, now it's not so interesting to ask people, hey, do you think air travel is going to be a thing? People are like, yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts, at least.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of across these past 3 years, have there been any big themes that have been consistently showing up? Have people been having largely similar responses, or are you seeing a lot of variation in what people are thinking about?
Um, but I purposely try to interview people from very different walks of life and
Mhm.
different places. And I uh, originally my plan was to just go up to random people on the street, and ask them, which I still do that. During the COVID times, that was probably even more unadvisable than under normal times. uh, but in terms of themes, um, I think the number one thing that really has resonated with me is people are really smart. Um, and whenever you start talking to them about like the future of humanity and, kind of like where they see things going, they have answers to those questions. But I feel like that too much of our lives is tied up, trying to uh, being focused on should you buy this product or not this product, should you
Mhm.
vote for this person or not this person, and like sort of like these very like other people trying to get us to do type of stuff questions, as opposed to kind of that more self-generative, you know, what kind of world do I want to live in? You know, what 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 responsibility do I have in terms of actually getting us there? You know, I mean, uh, I think if we could somehow get people to start asking themselves those types of questions, I think we would see a lot better behavior. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely hard to think about other people sometimes, and it can be so easy to just focus on what are your immediate challenges that you're dealing with in your life, and yeah, starting to think about, oh, what are the global challenges is definitely a shift in perspective, but um, yeah, yeah, it's great to think about. Um, do you have like a favorite set of people that you've chatted with? Are there like particularly memorable interviews that you've done?
Um, well, it depends on the day, really. There's some that I think will always be memorable, like
Uh-huh.
the guy with the chicken at the mall. Like, I don't remember much about the conversation, but a guy with the chicken at the mall. I just really,
That is definitely one that will stick out for sure.
that will stick with me. And I'm a little usually shy about going up to people. You know, like I don't know how to begin the conversation. Like I feel like, you know, uh, I feel like that if I were to judge myself on immediate appearances and interaction, I'd be like, this guy is a scammer or he's trying to sell me something. You know, it's like, you know, there's always a hook. You know, that the idea of I just want to have a casual conversation with you about these topics and put it on the internet, that's a little bit, I think, hard to believe. Um, but um, you know, I was not shy to go up to. I was like, you're walking with the chicken in the mall. You obviously want to have interactions with people. I was like, maybe I need a chicken to carry into the mall. Then I get people coming up to me. It's like, hey, don't be chicken. Let's get your thoughts on the future.
Yeah, yeah, gotta have that hook somehow.
Yeah, and there's like I interviewed a guy like 3 weeks ago. He was um, you know, in Mexico, surfing, and he was like 70, 80 years old.
Oh
And
my
I was just
goodness,
like,
good for him.
yeah, I know. I want to do that. Um, uh, uh, there was one guy I interviewed at, um, you know, in the mall also. Um, and, you know, just looking at him, he looked a little intimidating, I guess, you know, like tall, um, you know, it seemed kind of like, you know, young, maybe a little bit aggressive. I don't know. But I guess that day I was feeling a little bit more of interest than normal. So, I mean, I had a conversation with him and, you know, it worked out really well at the end of it. He was like, you know, thank you so much for coming and talking to me, things like that. And I find moments like that very touching, actually, where
Yeah,
people are,
yeah.
you know, I really appreciate the connection, you know.
Yeah,
So,
sometimes people just want to know that their voices matter.
indeed, indeed. So, and that's it. A lot of themes, you know, people always talk about opportunity costs. You know, why are we going to the moon instead of like taking care of problems down here on Earth? Um, you know, why are we going to the moon? Haven't we been there before? So that comes up a lot. You know, depending upon the person. I mean, not everybody. Well, one theme is very few people know that we're actually going to the moon. I tell you that.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like the space program is flying under the radar. Like you see those NASA t-shirts everywhere. They have NASA t-shirts in Old Navy, but they it feels like there's a distance between NASA's like a pop culture moment and like what's actually happening in the space program. Um, Yeah, I it's very funny to see that disconnect.
It's like an old band whose records have been mysteriously lost, and
Yes.
we just know the music was good.
Uh-huh.
We don't know what it is, but it was good.
Yeah, or it's like I used to teach high school and I'd see these kids wearing these like Nirvana t-shirts and I'm like, oh, you listen to Nirvana? And they're like, that's a band.
Yeah.
Like, so it feels along the same lines there with the NASA t-shirts sometimes.
NASA, what do they do? Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Have you ever been to see a launch or to like the Johnson Space Center or anything?
I've been to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Um, my aunts live down there, and we took a trip down to Florida to visit them, and saw the Space Center, saw some of the movies that they played about the astronauts like eating the jelly beans that are floating around. And I was really young at the time. I was maybe, I don't know, 10, 11 years old, but it's been a while. But my mom went to one of the space shuttle launches when she was in I think in high school. They took their students down from New Jersey all the way down to Florida, and she has a picture of the space shuttle launch, and it was like a really proud moment for her. And I remember having seen the picture in the photo album of the she was way far in the distance, and it just looked like this little speck with a bunch of smoke coming out the bottom. But like it was something that she really thought highly of and remembered. And um, yeah, it's funny how much of a impact those things have on people. Like you remember events like that, and it was something she thought was important enough to tell me about. So I think having that type of science in the pop culture and the public consciousness again is really something we need a little bit more.
Um, you know, one of NASA's plans is the very first person to step on the moon next will be a woman. You know, we
Perfect.
had,
That's great.
yeah, I was going to ask how you felt about it, but I guess you got
Yeah,
past that.
no, I think there's so few recognizable names of women in science. Um, like there people who are maybe a little bit more inclined will know like Sally Ride and Rachel Carson and like Marie Curie, but beyond like the people who won awards or who have like a notable um, kind of history, and a lot of the histories are like controversial too, which is why people tend to remember them. Um, like there's not very many names of women in science that people recognize. So I think having somebody having a female equivalent to like a Lance Armstrong is going to be really powerful for empowering young girls who might not have otherwise thought about themselves being able to do science. So I think it's great.
That's awesome. Yeah. Um, well, Crystal, did you have anything else or?
I think it will also be cool just to have some updated moon rocks. Here in Lincoln, the State History Museum is on the campus, and they have these like little itty bitty moon rock samples, and they are so sad. They're like, this flag has been to the moon, and here's a moon rock. And the flag is like falling out of the little plastic casing, and nobody's updated the exhibit in probably, I don't know, 30 years. And like it just makes me sad every time I see it. Like it should be such a cool thing. Like this flag has been to the moon, and it's so neglected. And I think it's just feels outdated, even though that science is just so impressive. Um, but yeah, it's just I think we could use a refresher in public consciousness of like these are really innovative things that we're doing, and think of all the technology that is going to get us to the moon that might have future applications in our day-to-day lives. Like I don't know, there's so much of NASA science that trickles down into the technology that we use all the time. That the space program has a lot of uses that maybe people are not always aware of. That I think it's a worthwhile thing that we are going back.
Yeah, I mean, talking about moon rocks, I mean, all of our samples are from the equatorial near side part of the moon, and the next landing is going to be on the South Pole area, which we discovered that there's actually ice that is permanently frozen in like these craters that always are in shadows because of
Oh,
the way that they the moon only has like a 1 degree tilt with respect to the sun, has no atmosphere, and there's these deep craters that are always like colder than the surface of Pluto that over I guess millions, tens of millions of years, I guess comets have hit the Earth or hit the moon, and some of those molecules have made it into these areas and they're just preserved. So
fascinating stuff. Yeah, there's things we still have to learn about it.
it's true. All the cats in my life don't love humans, so your cat's really special.
Yeah, she's a fun little one to have around. Um, yeah, she likes to know what's going on. She usually crashes all my Zoom calls.
That is awesome. It's good to have a cat that cares.
Yes. So just a personal curiosity question for you. Do you know the Talking Heads song Moon Rocks?
I don't. I don't.
Oh, it's weird and bizarre. The song title comes from a line, I ate a rock from the moon. It's a weird song, but yeah, if you hadn't heard it, I will recommend that one to you.
Um, so Talking Heads, I ate a moon rock.
I think the song is just called Moon Rocks.
Moon
Um,
rocks.
but one of the lines in the song that where it got the title from is I ate a rock from the moon. So.
That's really interesting. One of the astronauts that went to the moon, Alan Bean, he came back and he became an artist and really
Huh.
painted all these portraits of the moon. And on the moon, they're kind of like flopping around, and dust is like clinging to them and stuff. So he was able to keep like his mission patches and stuff.
Mhm.
And in those mission patches were like granules from like the moon, and he actually incorporated that into his paintings. So some of those paintings actually have like moon dust and things actually in it. Not quite eating it, but yeah,
Yeah, the painting of it. I didn't that's an interesting little piece of science trivia there.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of neat. But I'll have to listen to that. I'm gonna go pull that up right now, actually. So I'll
It's
be
a good
jamming to
one.
the Talking Heads.
Yeah, it's definitely one of their weirder ones, part of the maybe back catalog, but uh I don't know, it's always had like a special place for me. It's it's just bizarre and weird in like only ways that Talking Heads can be bizarre and weird.
That's cool. Well, well, Crystal, thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of your day. And I know it's in Nebraska. I think you're an hour earlier than I am. It's like 6:30 there, huh?
No, we were at
Oh,
7:30.
7. Okay,
Yeah, we're
7:30.
central. It depends. Nebraska has both central and mountain times, but
Oh,
like on the east side was central.
yeah, it's a really wide state, so that makes sense.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It takes about 8 hours to drive across it.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, have a good rest of your day, and thank you so much for speaking with me.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. I'm glad you found me. I don't know how you found me, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah, and if you know anybody else that'd be willing to have a discussion, I got like
Sure. One person I
some.
think would love to chat with you. Her name is Jocelyn Bosley, Jocelyn, Bosley. She's her official title is like research science communicator or something like that, but she's got a PhD in science history, and she is just a wealth of information in a bunch of really interesting ways. but she's at UNL and she would probably love to talk with you.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I'll message you and maybe you can help me make the connection. And it'd be interesting to see, based upon kind of like looking at what's happened in the past, how that might shape her views of what might happen in the future. Really kind of interesting.
Sure. Yeah, if you're I know you contacted me on Twitter and she's also on Twitter, so I'd be happy to connect you either that way or if you have an email address, I can find a way to get you her information.
That'd be awesome. Well, thank you so much, Crystal, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, you as well. And yeah, stay warm out there. It's a little chilly today. We're at
Yes.
least it's chilly here in Nebraska.
Well, it's chilly here, but you know, anything below 70 is chilly in Texas. So,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, enjoy the holidays, and I'm excited for you to continue on this project.
thank you. Okay, bye-bye.